Hello everyone, welcome to our Special Needs Corner. Today, we're diving into an epic clash of ideas, a real showdown between two huge art movements that totally defined an era, Neoclassicism and Romanticism. You can really think of it as a battle between the head and the heart, and we're about to break down exactly what that means.
So let's just jump right in. The whole conflict really boils down to this. On one side, we have Neoclassicism. This movement represents the mind. It's all about rules and the good of society. Think logic, order, and control. Then, on the other side, you've got Romanticism, which is all about the heart, freedom, and the individual. This is the art of pure passion and raw emotion. And honestly, this one key difference, well, it's the secret to understanding everything else we're going to talk about.
So when did all of this go down? Well, we're looking at a pretty intense period in history. Neoclassicism was the dominant force in the art world from about 1780 all the way to 1840. But then, right in the middle of all that, around the early 1800s, Romanticism crashes onto the scene as this powerful new challenger. So for a while, these two styles were actually active at the same time, competing for attention, each one offering a completely different vision for how to see the world.
All right, time to meet our first contender. In this corner, we have Neoclassicism, which I'm calling the art of reason. This movement was built on the belief that logic, order, and self-control were the absolute highest virtues, not just in life, but especially in art.
Now, what's so interesting about Neoclassicism is that it was all about looking back to the past. This wasn't just some brand new idea. It was a new classicism. Artists were looking way, way back to the art and ideals of ancient Greece and Rome for their inspiration. This was all happening during a period called the Age of Enlightenment, a time when everyone was buzzing about reason and science. So it kind of makes sense that the art from this time would celebrate things like Roman history and its serious, duty-bound heroes.
So what did this art actually value? Well, the big ideas were order and solemnity, a kind of serious, formal feeling. The inspiration? That came straight from classical Rome, with a huge focus on themes like patriotism and courage. And the overall tone of these paintings? It was always calm, rational, and serious. Everything was meant to feel controlled, deliberate, and, morally good for you.
So how did they actually get that clean, controlled look? Well, neoclassical artists followed a really strict set of rules. First, they focused on drawing with clear, sharp lines. Color was important, but it came second to the drawing. Second, they used incredibly precise, controlled brushstrokes to create a texture that was totally smooth and polished. I mean, you literally can't see a single brushstroke. And finally, they staged most of the action right up front, in the foreground, almost like you're watching a scene from a play.
Let's take a look at a perfect example of this style, the Oath of the Horatii. The whole scene is set in this stark, simple Roman hall defined by three big arches in the background. Right in the center, a father stands holding up three swords. To his left, his three sons are standing ramrod straight, powerful, their arms stretched out to take an oath. They're all straight lines and tense muscles. But then, over on the right, you see a group of women, totally collapsed in grief. Their bodies are all soft curves, which is a huge contrast to the men. Notice how the light is really harsh and clear, especially on the men, and how every line is crisp and defined. The surface of the painting is so smooth it almost looks like polished marble. There are absolutely no visible brushstrokes.
So what's the big takeaway here? If Neoclassicism had a motto, it would definitely be this: society is more important than the individual. This was an art of reason, of tradition, and of order. It was all about championing the greater good and your duty to your country as the highest possible ideals.
But not everybody was a fan of this rigid, orderly way of doing things. And that brings us to our second contender, Romanticism, the art of passion. This wasn't just a small change in style. It was a full-blown rebellion against the cold, hard logic of Neoclassicism. It was time for emotion to storm the stage.
Romanticism basically looked at all those old rules and flipped them completely upside down. It was a movement that celebrated emotion, imagination, and powerful individualism. And instead of looking back to ancient Rome, the Romantics were fascinated by the medieval era. Think knights in shining armor, ancient castles, and epic legends. They believed an artist's personal feelings and unique experiences were the most important things you could possibly paint. And you can totally see that reflected in its key characteristics. The values here are things like intuition, emotion, and imagination. The inspiration comes from the medieval past, from faraway exotic lands, and even from the supernatural. And the tone, it's subjective, it's spontaneous, and it's all about breaking the rules.
This is art that is designed to make you feel something and feel it intensely.
The technique was a complete 180 too. First, Romantics unleashed wild, unrestrained, rich color. Second, they used visible, energetic brushstrokes, a style that's often called painterly. They actually wanted you to see the artist's hand at work, to feel the energy. Third, their compositions were often crowded and built on dramatic diagonal lines, which creates a sense of movement and chaos. The whole goal was pure, dramatic, emotional impact.
Let's see this in action with a super famous Romantic painting, The Raft of the Medusa. What we're seeing is a makeshift raft being tossed around on a dark, stormy sea. It is absolutely crowded with the suffering survivors of a shipwreck. Their bodies twist and turn, forming this chaotic pyramid of both despair and hope, which leads our eye up to a man at the very top, waving a cloth desperately at a tiny little ship way off on the horizon. The light is incredibly dramatic, with deep dark shadows clashing with brilliant highlights, creating a real sense of turmoil. And you can almost feel the raw emotion in the thick, energetic brushstrokes that are clearly visible all across the canvas.
So what's the philosophy behind all this passion? Well, it's the complete opposite of what we saw before. The motto for Romanticism could be, "The individual is more important than society." This movement was all about celebrating originality, freedom, intuition, and the wild, untamed power of the human spirit.
All right, we've met our two contenders. We have Neoclassicism with its cool, calculated logic, and Romanticism with its fiery, untamed emotion. So now, let's put them side by side for the final showdown. Reason versus passion.
Okay, this chart really sums it all up perfectly. Let's go through it. First up, philosophy. Neoclassicism is all about reason, while Romanticism is driven by passion. Next, values. Neoclassicism prizes order and tradition, whereas Romanticism champions imagination and freedom. Their techniques are polar opposites. Neoclassicism uses those clean, clear lines in that smooth, invisible brushwork. Meanwhile, Romanticism embraces rich color and visible, energetic brushstrokes. And finally, their subjects. Neoclassicism looked to the heroes of Greek and Roman history, while Romanticism was way more interested in legends, wild nature, and dramatic, exotic scenes.
So, after seeing this huge clash of titans, the big question is, which side are you on? Are you more drawn to the art of the mind, with its clean lines, noble ideas, and rational order? Or do you find yourself preferring the art of the heart, with its dramatic color, intense emotion, and celebration of individual freedom? Which one of these styles inspires you?
That's all for today. Thanks for watching.